Hello to a new video and to new features in Photo Vision, Video Vision and Stages 2024. Today, I'd like to take a look at the improved dynamic shapes with you and show you how you can create such interesting animations yourself. The dynamic shapes, which you will find here in the toolbox, have consistently evolved since their introduction in version 10 and are a real Swiss Army knife. I primarily use this versatile tool as a background or as decoration for interesting graphic effects or to create belly band requests. I also like to use it as a mask in the mask effect. In version 2024, the dynamic shapes have been expanded again. Completely new here is the stripe object with which you can create patterns. In the properties, you can set the colors, the width of the stripes. Give it a try and also take a look at the mini templates. There are some examples of what you can do, and of course you can customize these examples however you like. These three dynamic shapes have learned a new trick. Rectangles, circles, and triangles can now have colored outlines. We'll have a look at that in a moment. For now, I'll use a rectangle as a background and set a beige color here. Next, let's check out the ellipse. You can also transform them into a circle. You can decide the size using the selection box, and you can now enable a border in the properties. It can be inside or outside. You can choose the color for the border, and you can of course also adjust the width. And if you set the fill color to transparent, you get a ring and can use it for various purposes, like marking something on a card or as decoration. Rounded corners are now also possible for rectangles and triangles, and you can again make detailed settings there. I have the triangle here. I'll make it a bit smaller, rotate it, and at the rounding point I can now create round corners. I can still give the triangle a gradient. And the triangle can now also have a border. And you can adjust the color and width for this as well. I'll show the rectangle now. And I'll make it smaller for now. And here too, you'll find the setting for the corner radius. You can round off all corners or set different corner radii for all four corners. And with this, you can, for example, create speech bubbles like these by yourself or the elements from the beginning. We'll get to that in a moment. But here's one more practical tip for the rectangle shape. You can also use it to easily create even color borders and overlay them over your photos and videos. I'll just show you that now. I've just accidentally added 2 photos and a video to a chapter object. All the objects are cropped in terms of aspect ratio. And now I'm going to layer a rectangle on top. I'm going to change the color to a light brown beige and adjust the duration of the rectangle to the length of my objects. I could reduce the size of the rectangle now, but no, I want to punch a frame out of it. In other words, add a border to this rectangle and invert it. And I do that by clicking on Invert Shape and then via the padding. Adjust the distance of the fill color from the edge of the selection box. With the corner radius, I can once again ensure rounded corners. And we end up with a colored frame that visually connects our photos and videos when they are played. I'll show you once quickly in large. You have these dynamic shapes, which are incredibly versatile objects that can do a lot. But now let's talk about the rounded color stripes animation from the beginning. I'm going to start with the color gradient. This will serve as my background. However, I'm only going to work with 2 colors, so I'll get rid of one of the dyes here. For my color gradient, I'm choosing a subtle progression from orange-yellow to yellow. Next, I'm going to grab the rectangle to create a rounded color stripe. I'll insert the rectangle into the Layout Designer, where I can now set the height of my rectangle. I can do this by dragging the selection frame, but Video Vision and Stages users can also directly enter this height in manual input. Now it's time to move to the rectangle's properties. Here I'll change the corner radius first. I'm putting in 100% so all four corners are fully rounded. I'll centralize the rectangle and at the same time change its color. I choose a darker orange and then reduce the view size in the Layout Designer. Because I want to animate my bike lane with a motion path, I also open the manual input, which allows more precise work, and first, the color strip should fly from the outside into the visible area, but not immediately when it appears in the timeline, but with a slight delay of 0.5 seconds. Then I add a marker so the color strip will fully enter the image. Because it has to be marked, I set 1 second and allocate a standing time of 2 seconds. Then another third marker is added. With this, the color strip then retreats somewhat. The time mark of 5 seconds can stay. I will play here once. You can see the color stripe moves in, pauses for a moment, and moves out a bit again. Since I want to demonstrate multiple color stripes, I'm going to copy the rectangle again while holding the Control key. I'm about to change the color again. This time, I'm opting for red. I can now see the red stripe in the AUD Designer, but naturally it overlays my orange stripe. If I now clean up the timeline for a different sequence, meaning allowing the red rectangle to appear a bit later, then we can see what happens. The orange stripe appears and the red one follows suit with the exact same movement. But now I want the red stripe to come in from the other side, and that's straightforward. Just select the marked object, then go to Edit. Edit Trip Selection at the top. Select Flip Horizontally. Now we can see the red object on the left of our visible area. I'm going to adjust the timing of this bike again. From half a second, I'm going to make it 1 second, the second mark being 1.5 seconds, plus 2 seconds of standing time, and the third mark. I'll set it to 4 seconds. Then I'll bring all objects back to the same display duration. Simply highlight the objects and set the duration to 6 seconds in the properties and play the game once. And you can see that orange and red have the same movement, but in a slightly different timing. If I want to move the color stripes to a different position, I could move each stamp individually, or I could gather everything into a flexi collage and move it. So I'm marking my first color strip and placing it in a flexi collage. Now on the flexi collage, I can rotate my strip and set a different entry position into the visible image area. Manual entry helps again with exact placement. I'm now setting this flexi collage to x = 30, and the other rectangle also goes into a flexi collage. I also rotate this flexico collage to 45 degrees. And I set this to x = 70. The stripes run in from both sides and move slightly differently in terms of timing. If you want wider stripes, there are 2 ways to enlarge them. One way would be to do it directly on the flexico collage by simply increasing the width and the height. Here now to 150 degrees, and therefore the content of the Flexico collage increases. You can see that up here with the red stripe, and I'll do it again right away for the orange one. When playing, you can see that the two stripes are now significantly wider. For another colored stripe, I'm going to copy my first rectangle, my original shape and animation, and I'll recolor it right away. And I could also change the size directly on the object, in other words, change the height of the object. I'm setting this here for this mark to 60 degrees, and I have to put it to 60 degrees for all other marks as well. So either click on each mark individually and input the value, or alternatively, check this box for the size of the predecessor. Adjusting the size via the Flexico layer sometimes saves some time. See what is more practical for you. I'm certainly changing the timing once more for this green bar. I'm deleting the second and third markers first. My first marker then gets 4 seconds as the start time, and a second marker with 4.5 seconds. The green stripe is also returned to a Flexico layer for positioning. I'm rotating the Flexico layer again in the Layout Designer. And the green stripe should now drive into the picture on the far left. For the fourth and last strip, I'm copying the whole Flexico layer. Color the rectangle back to purple. And I'm also shifting this Flexico layer again. The purple stripe should enter on the opposite side. That's why it's filmed here again. And then the animation is ready. The interesting effect of this animation mainly comes from the timing. You just have to try and vary. Use different animation times and widths to make the effect interesting. If everything appears with the same timing in the perfect mirrored place, it can quickly look dull and boring. This example and other variants will also be available for download in the VIP Club. And because it fits so well with this tutorial and the examples, we're adding a caption. And here too, we are working with a new function. I'm sure you've already seen the new properties of the text object. These make it possible to give texts a background and thus also a border. I'm going to adjust my text object here. There will also be an extra video on this topic, but here is a small version. I enabled the text background for the entire text. It will now appear filled with this selected slightly transparent color. And then I also activate the rim inside. I increase the corner radius to 5%, and then I set the background color for the text to completely transparent. So the text background is no longer filled, but I still have a border there. I'm going to color the border to white and the font color as well. And then I just place my text object here and animate it again with a small movement path from left to right. Just 2 keyframes with 2 positions, then maybe adjust the text animation again, so that the letters are displayed one by one. And then I'm going to copy the object again. Change the text content. I have to make the text selection frame a bit larger so that the text fits in there on one side. Then change the position of the 2 keyframes again. And last but not least, edit the path again and reverse the path so that it runs from right to left. I'll show you what it looks like shortly. And if you liked the video, I'm delighted by a thumbs up. Thank you.